are. I'm Tom Osman, and this is Whatever Comes Next, the podcast where I explore the world of underground and independent music making. And on today's episode, I am talking with Shelby Lermo, a guitarist and vocalist of a variety of different bands, including Nails and Ulthar currently. But we are in particular here today to talk about his latest project, Blood Monolith. The band having released their debut album, The Calling of Fire, back on the 16th of May on Profound Lore Records. And when I did this interview with Shelby, I caught up with him when he was actually on tour with Nails. And I got him in a hotel room one morning before the band had to travel to the next venue. The sound quality had a few little issues along the way, but hopefully I've managed to smooth them out for the most part. And yeah, Shelby has a lot and has had a lot of different musical projects over the years. So there was a lot to get into here, as well as talking about Blood Monolith, talking about some of his other projects, and his thoughts on music and metal and other aspects of the music world in general. I was quite impressed by the fact that Shelby is not on any kind of social media with Blood Monolith for, I guess, kind of like ethical value related reasons. So from a promotional point of view, if you'd like to keep up to date with what is happening with Blood Monolith, for the time being, the best thing to do is to follow Profound Lore Records. So if you want to see what's going on with possible new releases, with tour dates, at the moment, Blood Monolith don't have anything yet lined up, but hopefully at some point in the future we will see live shows for the band. So yeah, The Calling of Fire, it is an absolutely brutal extreme metal record, which I'm very partial to. I do like myself some brutal extreme metal. It is thunderous and intense and skull-splitting metal, and if that's your kind of thing, then you should enjoy the track that I'm going to play from the album at the end of this interview with a little clip coming up. You can follow me at Tom Osman Sounds. You can go to my website, tomosmansounds.com, to check out my music and related writings. And with that, there is nothing left to say, but Shelby Lermo of Blood Monolith, take it away. Record, Every Bridge Burning, was really cool. Is that you joined the band for that album? Is that right?
Yeah, I played on that album, and I worked with Todd for probably like 2 years before that, working on the music for it and stuff.
And so are you, like, I don't know how active they are in general, but you've still got Ulthar going as well. So Nails, Ulthar, and Blood Monolith are all ongoing now at the moment.
Yeah, and I have some sort of like studio only projects that I do too, in my free time.
And is that kind of like quite common for you to have a lot of different projects on the go all at once?
Yeah, I have to. I have to keep busy. I'm kind of crazy like that. I have to have five things going at once, or I don't see the point of just having one. It has to be at least five, or else I feel like I'm stagnating.
Well, I mean, it's good to be busy.
Yeah.
So thinking about The Calling of Fire, it's, I've been enjoying listening to the record. I think a suitable word to describe it is savage. Like you've got this track, Slaughter Garden, on the record, which does sound like the soundtrack for people being butchered. Like it's a very relentless record. And, you've been playing extreme metal for a while, but I'm kind of curious, what particularly was your approach going into starting?
It's really like death metal that like I listen to, or when I'm always listening to Asian. I'm listening like the classic, like heavy, brutal stuff. And I've never really played in a band that's done that, I I quit Vastum in 2023, and it kind of opened up a little creative space in my schedule, and since I had moved to the East Coast and was still playing in bands on the West Coast and doing this whole like back and forth across the country thing. And so after I quit Vastum, I was like, I need to do something locally with people, in Northern Virginia and Washington, DC, people that I can actually go to the practice space and like, you know, feel like I'm like jamming with a band again, because everything I do since I moved is like long distance, traveling across the country just to meet up with people. So it was like, if I'm gonna do something local and do something that I want to do, like that was the sound I wanted to do. It's just something super relentless and pummeling, and that's the type of music that I listen to. But and I've never really played it, so that was the direction I wanted to go. I'm fucking just turned 46 years old. It's like, okay, I'm gonna be an old man soon. I need to get my wiggles out, so to speak, and do what I really want to do.
Yeah, get into doing brutal death metal while you've still got the energy for it.
Right, right.
And I was wondering as well, have you already been performing with the band or?
Not yet, not yet. We do have stuff coming up. We can't announce it yet for reasons. But we do have shows coming up this summer, but we haven't played any shows. That was a very planned thing where we when we were recording the album, we were like, we're gonna finish an album and have it totally finished and mastered and put that out first before we play shows, or before we put out a demo or anything like that. We're gonna like finish the album and have it out in the world first, and then worry about shows after that.
Yeah. And thinking about, well, it's partly about the record and it's partly about how you would play the stuff live. So, the album opens with Trepanation Worm and it just like comes in instantly. And it reminds me, even though it is at this stage way more extreme, it reminds you a bit of the start of Far Beyond Driven by Pantera.
Uh-huh.
The way that Strength Beyond Strength comes in. And I think like for a lot of people, the first time you hear that record, you're like, what the fuck? Like, it's just suddenly all there. And it made me wonder for you with this music, and you do have a bunch of other songs that come in quite hot as well. Like, how much of a challenge is it to get on stage and just kind of like go, right, we have to go straight into it?
That's something I always want to do. You might notice, if you're familiar with Ulthar at all, all of our albums start with just like, there's like a punch in the face, and then usually on the second song there's like some sort of intro that most bands would put before the first song.
Mm.
I'm not a fan of like trying to build the atmosphere first and then coming. It's like, just fucking go for it and like get people's attention first, and then if you're gonna dick around and do ambient, synthesized or whatever, do that later. But like, you're a fucking death metal band, like get people's attention first, and then worry about all the icing on the cake later, all the bells and whistles.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I was thinking as well, like in the record, it's track 5, I think, at the start of Apparatus, where you do have this kind of like synthy ambient
Yeah,
intro. And it's
yeah.
almost like a bit of a trick. It's like as if to go like, it's cool, you can chill now. It's going to be relaxing. There's about 5 seconds of that, and then it's another
Right, right.
fist.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Planned to be as such. Like, the ambient intro goes at the beginning of side two, like long after you've had your foot up everyone's ass. Then you can
Yeah.
then you can take your foot off the gas for a second, but not too long.
And you've got some cool movie samples, I would say. Like, I think it's at the end of, actually, I think it's the end of Trepanation Worm. You've got a Werner Herzog sample. Is that right?
Yeah, there's two Werner Herzog samples. I think the other one's a little more buried in the mix, but yeah, there's some Herzog in there. He's a personal hero of mine. I,
Yeah.
I try to. I've read all his books. I subscribe to his philosophies. I think he's great.
Yeah, he is cool. What do you remember? Like, what was your introduction to Herzog?
Oh man, that's a great question. I'm not sure. I know exactly what it was. It was probably Nosferatu,
Hmm.
but It's been so long. I don't remember. My
Yeah.
memory's a little shoddy.
Have you seen that documentary, My Best Fiend, about him
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Klaus
Yeah.
Kinski? Yeah, that's amazing.
That's where the sample's
Ah, right. Okay. Yeah, I love his story about how he would basically just get Kinski as mad as he possibly could and get him to rage, and then when he was out of energy, then he'd start filming
from.
in
Right, right.
what was it, Aguilera, Wrath of God.
Yeah, yeah. That's one of my favorite movies. Yeah, he's a brilliant man. I'm like, yeah, yeah. He's so old. I'm like, what are we gonna do without him? You know.
Yeah, for sure.
I also realized um, that same sample. Somehow I missed that. I'm wearing my Full of Hell shirt right now.
Oh, I noticed
I was
that.
listen,
Very cool.
I was listening to Trumpeting Ecstasy, their album the other day, and I realized they used a sample from a couple. I think just like a couple lines later of the same speech in the same movie. I was like, oh fuck! Like somehow I missed that until the album was already finished and put out. It's like, oh well. I hope nobody notices.
Well, you picked a slightly different part anyway, at least.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think there is yeah, I think Herzog is inspiring for a lot of people, in various different areas of art and various different genres when it's music. On the topic of your playing, so something I'm always curious about when I talk to people that play fairly technical music, and obviously this is not like you know technical metal as such, but I think most death metal has got quite a technical, you got to be at a certain level to be able to play at that speed, and there's a certain level of technicality that's involved. So I'm always interested in these cases of like how people get to that point. So what was sort of your introduction to playing guitar, and how did you evolve from that to at the level where you could play extreme metal?
Oh man, I've been playing guitar like over 30 years at this point. And the reason I picked up guitar in the first place, I mean, technically, the reason I picked up a guitar in the first place was Nirvana, Nevermind. I was 13 or 14 years old and got that album, and I was like, I was listening to the songs, and I was like, this sounds like I could do this. Like they're not a technical band whatsoever, but yeah, I think my parents bought me a Squire Stratocaster for my 14th birthday, and I was horrible, but it was just years and years of like following my musical taste. I think within 2 years of hearing Nevermind, I had bought Butchered at Birth and Legion, and my taste just rapidly evolved, and my playing just eventually caught up with it. But that being said, like I'm not a shredder. Like I can't play fucking arpeggios. Like I'm not like an arch spire guy or anything. That's great. That's cool that they do that, but like I'm never gonna be at that level. And also I don't want to be in a band where the focus is the technicality. I
Mm,
like bands where the technicality is there enough that like it grabs your attention, but it's not the entire focus of the music. That there's
yeah.
there's something weird and like quick little things where that catch your attention. I think that's really cool. But when it's all of that, it becomes like a salad, a riff salad. Like you can't pick anything out.
Yeah. And so, like, thinking about, like Deicide and Cannibal Corpse that you mentioned. So, I would imagine that when you got those records, it was pretty different to when you got Nevermind. Like, you couldn't immediately go, like, right, I'm just going to play along to this. Like, how did you sort of get into starting to play in that style?
Yeah, no, I still can't play along to those albums. And when I first heard them, that's what got my attention was like I couldn't even make out what was happening. It was just total audio chaos. And when I first heard it, I thought it was like funny to me. I was like, what the fuck even is this? Is that a human voice? Is that like a
Yeah.
guitar? I can't make anything out. Um, and I would put it on for my friends and stuff, just like just to fuck with them. Like this is crazy. What is this? But as far as figuring out how to play like that, it was just years of listening to that type of music and you know playing more and more and more and breaking it down more and more and more, figuring out all the little techniques and all the little tricks of the trade is just, yeah. I mean, it's not the best answer, but it's just practice, practice,
Yeah.
practice to keep at it, until you learn how to do it.
It's funny with Cannibal Corpse, like those first albums are so raw in terms of the playing and the production. It is kind of funny that they have become this death metal institution and they've become more technical and kind of, I mean, I feel a bit crazy saying Cannibal Corpse are now refined, but their sound has kind of refined from its origins. But for like people that aren't into extreme metal, if you show them a Cannibal Corpse album, it's still going to probably be as shocking as ever. But it's kind of funny that they're now these elder statesmen of
Yeah,
extreme metal and they're still making amazing music all these decades later.
right. Well, I think something to bring it full circle. I think something that Blood Monolith has in common with early Cannibal Corpse is like if you listen to Eaten Back to Life, like there's there's like almost like a punk vibe to it. They're sort of playing at the edge of their abilities, and you could hear it in the music. Like they're not seasoned professionals yet. Like they're kids.
Yeah.
They're kids playing like right at the edge of their abilities. And I think for better or for worse, that's kind of like you can hear that in Blood Monolith too. Like I'm not the most perfect like player, and I don't want to have an album that's like super polished and technically perfect. Like I like having it a little rough around the edges, and that's exactly what Cannibal Corpse did early on. And now it's like, yeah, of course they're in the most expensive studio with the most expensive gear. They've all been playing crazy music their whole lives. So yeah, everything's spot on perfect. But like, yeah, those early albums, you can hear it kind of falling apart at the seams, and that's part of the charm of me. Another
Yeah.
another band that really it like had that same effect on me is Cryptopsy. Like the first couple Cryptopsy albums,
Yeah.
the music's so fucking crazy, and it's kind of like falling apart as it goes, and that's what makes it so cool. It's unpolished and unrefined. And it's to me that's the best type of music.
Yeah. What is it? The None So Vile is just such an unbelievably brutal record. I love that. I remember
Yeah,
I introduced that to someone who was quite into metal, but they didn't know that album, and it was such a delight to see someone experiencing that album for the first time because
yeah.
it's just unbelievable how
That's
brutal
one
it
that
is.
definitely I that's when I also discovered probably in the late 90s. That was just like, and now it's like you know the people who understand. Like if you bring up that album around certain people, they're like, oh my god, like that is the best album. I'm so glad you brought, like the if you know, you know. Like that's
Yeah.
that's one of the big ones that I feel like it kind of gets overlooked because Cryptopsy, like, they started added a keyboard player and got kind of weird in their later years. And some people, so that was like the introduction point for a lot of people. They're like, I don't know, that band kind of sucks or whatever. And it's like, if, like I saw them back in the on the Whisper Supremacy tour, and it was just like life changing. They were already like going in another direction by that album, but it was just like absolutely life changing to see them back then.
Yeah. It's an interesting point that you bring up about the being rough around the edges and that kind of punk aspect, because I feel like that's sort of a question in a lot of extreme music is like how much there is or how much you allow the kind of like raw elements of it and how much you go for the polished technicality. And I suppose like when you have bands that have got, I mean, I don't know if like crust punk has really made much of an impression on you, but I feel like when you have a crust punk element, it sort of lends itself towards an intentionally raw kind of sound. But when things get very technical and there are a lot of solos, then it seems like it's kind of hard to keep some of that because you sort of tend to go towards being very technical in order to be able to hear everything that's being played.
Sure, sure. And I think also like with a super polished, super technical sound, bands that do that, it's like you're stripping away the human element of the music. You're like every solo is like each note is like recorded separately and then comped together, and like all the drums are beat replaced and recorded to a grid, and like we recorded our album to a click, full transparency. But like it becomes so apparent with a lot of that type of music. There's there's like no humanity left to it, and that's what's sick about crust punk and anarcho punk and shit like that is it's like that shit was like played live in the studio and you could hear it. That's a band being a band, you know.
Yeah. And I think like the artwork as well for the album kind of fits the that sort of aesthetic. Like if I just look at that, it looks like a cover for some kind of grindcore or crust punk, and definitely something extreme, and like it suggests something really dirty. What's the story behind the artwork?
Oh, that artwork is like that's like a decades long dream being realized. That artwork is by Nick Blinko, the singer of Rudimentary Peni. And Rudimentary Peni is another one of those bands. Like they sum up everything we were just talking about to me. Like they were like one of the first punk bands I got into, like early British anarcho punk, but also just so weird and like outsider. Like I've I love everything about the vibe and the music, everything about Rudimentary Peni. And when it came time, I've wanted to get Nick Blinko. I'm such a huge fan of Nick Blinko's artwork. I've wanted to like license something forever and get it on an album cover, but I didn't know how to go about doing it. And this time around, we just like as a band, we talked about it, and I was like, I think that would, I think that would be a really good fit. I know that the band Iron Lung, they're like a two-piece grind band from the U.S. And I know that they had Nick Blinko artwork on at least two of their albums, and so I know one of those guys. I just wrote to him. I was like, how would I go about getting in touch with Nick Blinko to license a piece of art? He put me in touch with a gallerist in London who deals with all the licensing for that stuff, and we just went back and forth until we figured it out and got it. And yeah, that's like the piece of art that's on the cover. It's called Black Eyed Baby. It's from 1980, I think. So it's from when he was really young, and it's from the. I mean, it was created in the early days of like British anarcho punk. So I feel like it's just really a callback to like the mindset behind the whole thing that we're doing. There's not much like musically in like we don't have the band doesn't have sonically much in common with Rudimentary Peni, but like the through line from that artwork to where we are now, it makes total sense to me. Aesthetically, it totally works. I understand, and I also understand it's like we had this conversation also as a band. Like we also don't want to just have another like blood and guts standard death metal album cover like every other band. There's nothing wrong with that, but like we wanted to do something different. We're like, it's gonna set us apart to have something slightly different and maybe not as expected as
Yeah.
people are used to.
Yeah, definitely. I like the sort of ambiguity of it. Like it's kind of
Yeah,
disturbing, but it's not exactly clear why it's disturbing.
right. Yeah, I like that. I like that about it a lot. We went through a lot of his artwork, going back and forth with the galleries to see like what was available, what was he willing to let us license, what could we get. I'm really happy with what we landed on.
Yeah. No, that's great that there's that story behind it as well that is, for you such an inspirational character. So that's cool that you do have that
Yeah,
connection of your inspiration connected to the album.
yeah, absolutely.
And on the topic of recording the album, so I think you co-engineered the album. Is that the right way to put it? So I'm curious to know like what that means in practice and what kind of experience you have in the sort of recording production side of music.
Yeah, so the drums and vocals were recorded with Matt Michael. He's an engineer in the Virginia area. He lives about a half an hour away from me. And I recorded all the guitars and bass. So we kind of did it together. We basically we didn't have a record deal. We didn't have like funding to record the album. So we kind of did it on a shoestring budget, which meant I did half of it and Matt did half of it, and then he mixed the whole thing just to like keep costs down. I knew that I could record at home. Like I've recorded a couple albums at home. I have a home studio, but I mean it's basically I can't record drums there. It's not big
Yeah.
enough to record drums there. So the last few albums I've done, I have a black metal project called Fanata Theory, and I have like a grind project called Human Corpse Abuse. I recorded all that stuff at home in my basement studio, except for the drums. And it was sort of the same thing where it's like, okay, I know I can do a good job capturing all the strings and stuff. That'll at least keep the cost down. And then basically I paid for the studio time, and then it was just a gamble of like, okay, this is hopefully this album is like good enough that a label picks it up and they'll like reimburse the money that I spent in the studio. And that's exactly what happened with Profound Lore. Was like I sent it out to Chris at Profound Lore, and like the next morning he was like, yeah, I want to put this out, I'll cover all the costs and stuff, which was just like awesome. Like that really my first choice of label that I would want to put this album out.
And have you worked with them before? I can't remember off the top of my
No,
head.
no. I've mostly worked with 20 Buck Spin for like the last 10 years. And
Mm.
he's awesome too. I when I say Profound Lore was my first choice, that's only because I knew 20 Buck Spin's calendar was completely full for 2025 already. I had already talked to him about that. And so knowing that it wouldn't happen with him, like,
Yeah.
you know, I've always wanted to work with Profound Lore. Before the album got picked up, I talked to multiple friends that have worked. You know, I vetted Profound Lore, so to speak. I talked to my bandmate Steve and Ulthar, whose other band is signed to Profound Lore. I talked to Dylan from Full of Hell; they'd worked with him before. I talked to Max from Caustic Wound and Mortiferum, and all of them were like, dude, absolutely. Like, if he says yes, work with him. He's the best. He always follows through on everything. He does what he says he's going to do. And to me, that's just the most important thing about working with a record label. It's like, do they do what they say they're going to do? Do they answer your emails? Like, I don't care. I would rather be on an independent label where they answer your fucking emails than be on Century Media and have some A&R like ignoring you. You know, like the communication is the most important part to me.
Yeah. Well, that kind of gets into a topic that I wanted to ask you about. So, one of the things I like to explore with musicians is sort of the practicalities, for kind of like independent DIY underground artists. And so, what I was going to ask you, which can kind of like feed into the experience with labels, is making music something that you make a living from and that you can make a living from?
Um, it's I think half right now the way my life is right now, it's probably half and half. I work freelance back home. I do audio video production work.
Mm.
I make my own schedule, and it's like gig work basically. Like I work events, I work conferences and stuff like that. So it's really half and half for me right now, which is honestly I'm very lucky. It's a very difficult place to get to. Even just half and half. I think you have to be a band like Obituary or something like the to actually make a good living playing music. It takes a long, especially death metal.
Yeah.
Like you have to be in the upper echelon to make a living off of it and make a good living off of it. So I'm very lucky to be like I can because I work freelance. I can take 2 months off of work to do something like I'm doing right now, and I can come home and go back to my real job and work some gigs to keep the money coming in, and then fuck off to Australia for a couple weeks to do a tour over there. And I'm very happy with how my life works right now. I get to do a lot of different fun, weird stuff and make money doing it. But I don't make my entire living off it, no. Nor do I think I would want to actually. It's
Hmm.
like it's difficult. Like this tour I'm on right now is like it's hard fucking work. It's funny because everybody, I talk to friends and family and tell them I'm leaving for 5 or 6 weeks and going on tour, and they're like, "Oh, that sounds so fun! You're gonna have so much fun." And I'm like, "If you only knew, like, it's fun. It's fun for about a half an hour a day
Yeah.
when you're on stage, and it is fucking hard work for the other 23 and a half hours a day, you know."
Well, so to draw the curtain back then for people who don't have the experience of going on tour, what are the sort of things that you have to expect?
Long, boring drives, unless you're in a bus and you can go to sleep and wake up in the next city. Like if you're driving yourself, there's just so much downtime of just sitting in the van, staring out the window. And if you're touring in the States, it's funny. We're touring with a band from the UK right now. Where are you at, actually?
I'm in Glasgow in Scotland.
You're in Oh, you're in Scotland. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. We're with a UK band right now who is touring the US for the first time. They're from Leeds, and like they're like tripping out because it's like you drive for so long and see nothing.
Yeah.
Um, a lot, there's some places where it's like, oh, you're in a crazy city, you're seeing all this new stuff, and it's really exciting. But there's so much, just like when you're driving across the Great Plains, you're driving across Wyoming and Montana and Iowa and Nebraska, and it's just like driving forever, and you don't see anything but cows and corn. uh, that's one aspect of it that's just like mind numbing, but also just yeah, late nights and early mornings. Like it's a lot of hard work. I mean, it's a lot of fun too. There's no better way to make. There's nothing I would rather be doing with my life right now. I'll put it that way. Like it certainly beats like cleaning toilets or something, but like it is. I think it's a lot more actual work than people realize. Like loading gear and sound checking and uh, yeah, it's a job. It's a real job. You know, I think people imagine it to be a lot of like partying and fun and yeah, I mean, which a lot of people do party on tour, but like I can't do that. Like I'm too exhausted to stay up with the boys or whatever. I'd rather go every night. Like all I want to do is get to a hotel room and go to sleep as quickly as possible.
Yeah. So, and then going back to the label side of things, so you mentioned how important it was that you've got a label that's responsive, which totally makes sense. But like thinking about the whole kind of, you know, the package of making music and getting it out there and trying to sort of, generate an audience and trying to make some money out of it to at least support the band. Like what do you expect a label to provide? Is it mostly a matter of the exposure and the distribution, or are there other considerations too?
Yeah, basically with a label like a label like Profound Lore or 20 Bucks Spin, it's like they're gonna cover all of the production costs. So like they're gonna pay for the studio and they're gonna pay for everything to get the album done, get the album produced, and then the band gets a chunk of copies from the initial pressing. And from then on out, like you depending how it sells, like after the label's cost is recouped, you'll get a percentage at the back end. Um, so if you don't sell any copies, you're not going to get much money at the end. But like if the album does well, then usually you'll split the royalties with the label, and there's a percentage breakdown. But yeah, I haven't worked with a lot of like big labels or quote unquote like major labels or whatever. Nails is signed to Nuclear Blast, but like I don't deal with the label really in that band. So labels more at the Blood Monolith, like Ulthar level. Those are more independent labels like Profound or 20 Bucks. It's yeah, it's basically just like they pay out for everything to get the album finished, and then you get a chunk of cash at the end, basically. And if you need a bunch of copies to sell on the road or whatever, you can buy them at wholesale prices from the label, and make some money off that too.
Yeah. And talking specifically about the forthcoming record and Profound Lore. So if I've got it right, do they have a North American and a European web store? Is that right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I think that's very important these days because yeah, shipping costs are just brutal. So it's great
yeah,
to have a label that can provide on both sides.
yeah. It's crazy. What I've done in the past, and this is speaking on a very very small terms, like with my black metal band, like I got a chunk of copies of the pressing and then just like sold them through the band's Bandcamp. So like I imported like a good chunk and then just sold them myself just so that people wouldn't have to pay. We did Ulthar did the same thing. We had we worked with a smaller label that repressed our demo, a label in Finland, and so luckily the guy it's Jason, who he's in Misery Index. He used to be in Dying Fetus. He ran the label, and he lives in the DC area. So he brought a bunch of records in his luggage and like dropped them off at my house so that we could sell them through our website, because it's just like it's ridiculous to try and pay like the shipping fees to get anything overseas now. It just doesn't. It without fail, it costs more than the product itself just to get the product across the ocean. You know, it sucks.
Yeah. No, I have that sometimes with like things I'm looking for on Discogs or whatever. Like there's a Today is the Day album that I've been wanting to have for ages. And every time I look at it online, it's like, oh, I managed to find a copy that's reasonably priced. It's like, okay, but now I have to pay an extra 100% for the, or like
Yeah.
150% for the shipping.
Right, right. Yeah. And it's crazy. I have had people pay that, like, you know, pay that amount to get a t-shirt or something to Germany. It's like they buy a $30 t-shirt and pay $35 shipping. And I'm like, I hate to do that, but and still even charging those prices, I still usually lose a little bit of money on it. I still
Mm.
when I every time I go to the post office and ship something overseas, the price has gone up a little bit more. So wherever I set the shipping at last time, it's gone up from there, and I end up like eating five, $10 sometimes, just because I'm not paying close enough attention to how expensive it's gotten.
Yeah, it's tricky. On the topic of merch and t-shirts, something that has come up quite often in interviews that I've done is the importance of the merch desk. So what's your experience with that?
So in Ulthar, I'm the merch guy when we go on tour. That's my job. And going back to your earlier question of what it's like the day to day of being on tour, that's a whole job unto itself. And when you're playing in the band and doing the merch table or whatever, it's like a whole other like set of numbers that you have to crunch, and like keeping track of what sizes are in stock, and like Ulthar's at a at a level here, and I when you're touring, when it's like Nails and Obituary and bands like that, you have to bring people, and that's their full time job. They load into the venue at 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and they're working their ass off until 1 or 2 in the morning, just trying to keep all that shit straight and restocking merchandise. Like, uh, you know, you have like pallets of boxes arriving in cities so that you can restock. I mean, it's great. That's the only way that you really make. I mean, not the only way, but that's half the income you make on the road is merch sales. So you really have to be on top of that stuff. And it's awesome that people want to spend that money and buy that stuff. It's a really it's a really cool way to support art and artists. Really, by buying a shirt, buying a record, buying a fucking hat, whatever. Like it's just a great avenue to have open to people, so to give money to artists to keep them going. Everybody gets something that they want out of it.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's I very often if I go to shows, like a t-shirt will be my first choice
Yeah,
of
yeah,
what I can get. And then that way as well you get to rep the bands as well when you're
yeah.
out and
Of
about.
course. Yeah,
Although
you
if
get
it's a death metal band, then usually people are like, "What is this band?"
yeah, yeah. Well, I like to wear. I have certain shirts that I wear to to keep people from talking to me. You know what I mean? I have a couple of them in my bag. I have a couple of shirts that are like tour only shirts that are so graphic and disgusting they can only be like worn in a venue at a death metal show. If I walk down the street, I go to the coffee shop or something. I've had this happen on this tour a couple times. I went to a pizza place in Boise, Idaho, and I looked down and I was like, oh shit, there's like a teenager taking my order at the pizza place, and I have like Satan fucking Jesus in the ass over a pentagram. And I like cross my arms like, oh shit, I forgot I was wearing this. I'm like gonna hurt somebody's feelings. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that can definitely happen. I've had that a couple of times where I've been walking along and like, "Oh shit, this is the t-shirt that I'm wearing."
yeah,
Now I
yeah.
feel self-conscious.
This is not for public consumption.
So Thinking then about the release of the record, so people can get it from Profound Lore. It's going to be on CD and vinyl. I forget, is it like a limited color
Yeah,
vinyl?
there's like a smoke gray vinyl variant, I think, and then just the regular black vinyl. I think that's the two options.
And then otherwise, people can get digital downloads off Bandcamp, or they can listen on the
Yeah,
streaming services as people sometimes do.
yes, yeah. It's all through Profound Lore and streaming services and stuff. I we already got our band copies and we already gave them all away. So if anyone needs copies, don't come to me. I'm out already.
And so, did you already get vinyl copies?
Yes, yeah.
Cool.
They came before I even left on the strip. They came like 3 weeks ago.
Nice. And do you have a
Yeah, so
record player at home?
yeah, yeah. I have a whole wall of records. The funny part is they're 90% of them are my wife's records. Like my vinyl collection is very, very small. And when we got married, we like combined our record collection, and she has way more records than me and way better records than me. So I get to sort of benefit from that. When people come to our house and they're like, "Oh, look at all these great records," I'm like, "Yeah, this is my record collection." But really, it was my wife who spent years collecting all those cool records. You know.
Well, I hope you're not going to be having to move house anytime soon, because I was living in Berlin, which was like I'd gone all over. I was in Prague, then I was in Dusseldorf, I was in Berlin, and as I was moving, I was gradually accumulating more records, and then I had to leave Berlin and come back to the UK. And I was like, oh fuck! Even for not, those are my records there, and it's not a huge amount, but even that, when you have to ship that, it's
Yeah,
pretty annoying.
yeah. No, we moved across the country, so we moved from California to Virginia. And luckily, I mean, I've moved enough times where like you're carrying the boxes of records. And if you move to an apartment up a flight of stairs, that's just it's rough, right? Especially if you collect books and records and shit like that. It's very rough. But this time, the distance was so far. We paid a company like to take a semi truck trailer basically full of all of our shit across the entire country.
Yeah.
Just paid that. It was a lot of money, but it was definitely worth like being able to just hop in a plane and fly to your new house and have your stuff show up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the fact that I had to go overseas was the issue. If I'd had more time, I suppose I could have just put it all in the ship, but I did not have the time to mess around with
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and it's only getting more expensive.
Indeed. So you mentioned before that you will have some live shows, but nothing to announce yet for Blood Monolith. So in terms of people keeping up to date with that, where is the best place for people to go for general news about the band?
Profound Lore. The band doesn't have any social media and won't have any social media. Um,
Good on you.
that's
Is that a yeah, I mean, what was the thinking behind?
I don't use social media, and uh, I have major issues with it. I won't go into it too much, but I have ethical issues with social media, and like the fact that nobody really like talks about Mark Zuckerberg, Meta, like
Please
giving.
don't in any way hesitate to go into it, because I feel like social media is a necessary evil, and if I could get away from the clutches of Mark Zuckerberg, I would happily do it. So
Yeah,
by all means, go ahead and tell me what you dislike.
yeah. I mean, for one, I just hate how it makes people act. Like, I hate seeing my friends like acting like fucking idiots publicly. It just the culture of it annoys me,
Mm.
and but besides that, it's just like Meta and Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg gave millions of dollars to like for Trump's inauguration. Like he, all of the so like the tech giants have basically like showed their support for fascism at this point and are are seeing no consequences for that. People are still acting like everything's cool, and uh, also it's just pure fucking capitalism. The whole if you look at Instagram, it's just ads upon ads upon ads upon
So
ads.
true.
It's tracking everything you're doing to sell you shit and to get your money, and I just think it's disgusting. That being said, I understand that it's a necessary evil, and I understand that the only way my band is going to get word out is through the record label using social media. So I am a bit of a hypocrite, but just me personally, I won't use that stuff. And I feel like Blood Monolith at least has enough of a, I don't know if I wouldn't call it political, but there's an ethic behind it. There's a DIY ethic, and there's thought put into the aesthetic and the idea behind the band, and the lyrics and stuff. And I just feel like having fucking Facebook or whatever doesn't fit in with that ethic and that aesthetic.
I dig it for sure. Shelby, it was great to meet you. Great to chat. Cool to talk about the forthcoming Blood Monolith record. It's very, very cool stuff. And yeah, I hope the rest of the tour goes well. And I hope to see dates coming up for Blood Monolith in the forthcoming months.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you having me.
My pleasure.
I believe the common denominator of the universe is not harmony, but chaos, hostility, and murder.